my right here, Nick, is your father, who I know very well. Joe, give us a little background about yourself, my friend, and thank you for being here.
Thanks very much, Tom, and we'd like to thank Team Toyota for their sponsorship and WBCB for allowing us to be on the radio today. My perspective in terms of sharing information today is strictly as a parent, the parent of a wounded Marine, and the effects that he suffered when he came back from the war as a result of traumatic brain injury. We're blessed that we have a doctor here today, and Vicky, that owns a hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber. They call it short for HBOT. So when Nick came home, in terms of symptoms, people don't realize, what is TBI and what does this really mean? From a parental standpoint, I looked at Nick and it was very lethargic, very withdrawn, incredibly poor memory. In fact, if he was in this fine facility that we're in right now and said, "Hey, Dad, where's the restroom?"
Sure.
And I said, "Just take 2 steps to the right and it's the third door on the left," he would take the 2 steps to the right and go, "What was I looking for?"
Yeah, exactly.
So as a parent, I was very concerned in terms of, okay, I have a returning hero veteran at the ripe old age of 22 or 23, and I'm thinking, is that it? Is it over? Now look, Nick looks fine, and thank God he has all his limbs, but mentally, because of the damage as a result of the bomb blast, he really wasn't there. Although he was there, he really wasn't there mentally, and it was very, very difficult. So I just, like any parent, I'm not different from any other parent, just tried to help my son in any way I could.
Oh, you went above and beyond, Joe.
Well, I was blessed that we, had the internet and was just doing a bunch of different research, and I never even heard, quite frankly, of the term TBI. What the heck is TBI?
Sure.
Traumatic brain injury.
Sure.
I did a bunch of research and actually came across a doctor in New Orleans, Dr. Paul Harch, who actually is a world-renowned specialist in the field of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Well, I just dialed the phone and I picked it up and called him, and 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 calls later actually got through to the doctor and told him the story of Nick and his fellow Marines and the wounds that they suffered, especially with head injuries and TBI and the effect that they had. And I was just looking for help. I didn't know where else to turn. We went to the VA and the VA is fine, but they're dealing with 55,000 injuries from the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's quite overwhelming. I just asked him for some help, and believe it or not, just simply asking for help, he said, "Sure, I'll treat him, and I'll treat him for free." I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Just get him down here. We were thrilled. We were overjoyed that we were going to be treated by a world-renowned expert. So we discussed it as a family, and I called the doctor back the next day, and I said, "Doc, I'm really grateful for your help and support, but I can't send my son down there by himself for a month.
Of course not.
He can't even find his way around our own house that he grew up in.
Exactly.
Or remember his aunts and uncles' names." So I said, "Hey, Doc, there was a couple of other wounded Marines in the vehicle behind him. Do you think you could help those guys out? I don't want to be presumptuous, but do you think you could help those guys out as well? They need some." He said, "Sure." All 3 boys happen to be named Nick. So the 3 amigos, we got them down there, the Semper Fi Fund helped support their transportation and the lodging, and Dr. Harch treated them for over a month in these hyperbaric oxygen chambers. And for those of you out in the audience that don't know what an hyperbaric oxygen chamber looks like, at least the ones that I've been experienced, now Vicky has much nicer units, but they look like torpedo tubes. Now, can you imagine immersing yourself in a torpedo tube that's like the size of a coffin that's maybe 6 inches over your nose, and being in this facility, and they have to close the hatch on it. So picture like a submarine from your World War II movies, and they're closing this hatch, and you're in this chamber for over an hour at a clip, right, Doc?
That's right.
That's the way it
The
is.
first time I saw him in that thing, I was hyperventilating. I couldn't stand it. I had to be in the next room. And I'm just a dad, but I was getting squeamish watching my son in there. Anyway, Dr. Harch treated him and the other two Nicks for over a month, and the results were miraculous.
That's incredible.
I just couldn't believe it, Tom, the results. I mean, literally, I went from
360-degree turn.
I went from having a son that was an honor roll student with many scholarship offers that went into the Marine Corps and came out and literally had a difficult time remembering out of this treatment, and it was nothing short of miraculous. His results and his conversation, his memory, things gradually came back.
Turned around.
So I tried to learn, more about what the heck is hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring Dr. Carchedi in right now, who is a board-certified integrative physician who spent 22 years in emergency medicine, now practicing integrative medicine. And Dr. Carchedi is the medical co-director of Oxygen Oasis Hyperbaric Wellness Center, along with the well-respected plastic surgeon and wounded care physician, Dr. Ben Lamb. After listening to this incredible story, and I mentioned Vicky, who we'll be bringing in a little bit, it's just fascinating me. First of all, I'm a believer in paths reaching one another for a reason. And when I told Joe about this, and when Joe started telling me the story, I was amazed. What are your thoughts on the story and your anticipation for the future with these types of treatments?
Well, these are one of many stories that I hear all the time. It's actually not unique. It actually happens all the time. And when somebody comes in and you get that great of a result, it's really, really gratifying. And it's unfortunate that we don't have the ability to help more people out there.
Absolutely. Now, how long have you been doing these types of treatments now, Doctor?
It's been for about a couple of years.
And what are the common symptoms that occur? And
well, most of the symptoms that are very common, actually, that Nick has, they can get headaches. You can actually have, after the fact, losses of consciousness, short-term memory loss, like we were just mentioning. You forget where you're going and things of that nature. So those things are very, very common. Insomnia and difficulty in focusing on certain things, like reading a book or actually watching television. You get distracted very, very easily. And also moods, the irritability they get. Okay. All of a sudden they react in an inappropriate manner.
Can you explain how the hyperbaric oxygen therapy works with the neurological conditions such as PTSD and TBI, concussion, strokes? How do you explain that? How the benefits occur?
Well, oxygen is a natural, it's in nature. And oxygen basically we normally have in our system, and what we're doing exactly is increasing the oxygen to not only our red blood cells, but also in the circulation and the fluid around in our circulation. And therefore, from going from a lower level, what we normally breathe at 21%, we're increasing it to a 100% concentration. So any tissue that's somewhat dormant or not working properly, we're upping the ante, and therefore the body starts healing itself.
Incredible.
Giving a natural product.
It's a natural, and that's what's so nice. You're listening to Let's Go Places with Tommy Toyota right here at the 7th Sea Lounge in Northeast Philadelphia. And Dr. Vicky, Joe, Nick, all of us, we're going to be back in just a couple minutes. Don't go anywhere. For those of you who are listening, we have a lot more to share with you, but now a quick break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back.